Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and welcome back to the Positive Perception YouTube channel for another episode of some GT3 goodness. We are in the French Riviera for this evening ahead of the third round, sorry if I can get my words out, of the Positive Perception GT3 Championship. And as always, my name is David Ressler. I'll be bringing you the camera action tonight. And I'm delighted to be joined alongside once more by the man himself, who I have not spoken to or seen in a very long time, Mr. Chris Hollible. Chris, how the devil are you? It's lovely to have you back in my ears.
Well, thank you very much. I am doing great. You know, it's summertime in the US, so beautiful weather out here, but I'm ready to get back into the commentary game with you guys because I've been out for a little while. The first two rounds I wasn't able to attend because of busy life. You know how that goes, but super excited for tonight, even though I don't necessarily love this track, but that's probably only because I'm just absolutely terrible at it. Let's be honest.
It is, it's definitely a track that splits opinion, isn't it?
Yeah, it's, it messes with my eyes, at least when I'm driving on it.
God, yeah. Okay, as far as I understand, they're different, like the different colors on the infield and the outfield. I don't know if that's the thing. They're different levels of abrasion as well, which I think is quite interesting. But you look at it from some of the angles that you can see on this track pan that we've got before we kick things off, which I'm hoping you can now see because I was sharing the wrong thing with you a minute ago. Although technically it was the right thing because it was still the server, so it wasn't all bad. But it does give you that kind of, you know, when you look at a striped shirt, you look too closely and it makes your eyes hurt. That's what I get when I look too closely at it.
It almost like striped shirts almost like move a little bit and kind of they just mess with you in general. And then, you know, depending on how powerful the PCs are, you know, you get the pixelation out in the distance and stuff like that. So it does kind of toy with me a little bit when I'm just like looking for my braking zones and braking spots. And I've never really gained a comfort with this track. So hopefully all of the drivers within this championship do like this course so that we don't get necessarily the kind of craziness that we had in the last race that I've been hearing so much about.
Yeah, you've heard it through me, you've heard it through the Stewards channel, you've heard it through the announcements that we've done. The first two rounds, in fairness, the first two rounds have been very busy in terms of on-track action. Valencia first round was great, really good fun, thoroughly enjoyed it. The action that we got on track was largely brilliant, to be fair. Considering we've got a lot of new names on the grid this season as well. Last round Indy was definitely a mixed bag. It was very good racing again, but I'm sure a lot of people will agree with me, and I can see Alex, Ace's boy, in the YouTube chat alongside a lot of other names, which I'll come back to in a second because I want to make sure you guys are recognised. Him and I were commentating in the round Indy a couple of weeks ago, and it was, yeah, rather messy. The stewards were busy. Including yours truly, because I spent a long time going through all of the many incidents that we had to look at. So yeah, hopefully we can get a clearer one this time. You hit the nail on the head, Chris, before we came live, didn't you? Because you were saying, like, we've got such a big runoff area around this track. Yes, there's probably going to be incidents. There always will be. We're never going to have a race where nothing happens, luckily. But at least if something does happen, it's not going to be as dramatic and as kind of impactful when you've got this amount of kind of space around you.
Yeah, you just go off as far as you want into the distance and then come back onto the track, hopefully safely. But hopefully nothing, I guess I should say, that would be a race ender or just take you out of the running completely. So hopefully we'll see some really close racing. And, you know, with close racing, obviously comes some risky situations, but a little bit of mitigated risk here with the extra runoff stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Interesting stuff. We'll go through the standings in just a second to bring you guys up to speed because I was doing them this afternoon and they are rather interesting indeed. Whilst it then gives me a chance to do the attendance record, it feels like, to make sure those in the running for the championships are in the server, because it's always a good thing to look at. But in the meantime, the chat is looking rather lively before we kick things off. Daniel Crinson, welcome to the chat. Thank you for subscribing as well. That was me.
You got choked up from the subscription. Yeah. Nice.
I'm just so happy, Chris. I'm just so pleased. So Dan, thanks for subscribing. Thanks for coming along, and good to see you in the server as well. I can see you sat there at the moment. I think I saw you were looking rather quick in the practice session as well, so we'll keep an eye on that. Moore's Beth, Not sure who you are, but thank you for subscribing. Lurking in the chat, Rickster NL and Papa Smurf Papa Smurf TV, not FTV. Good evening to you guys as well. And of course, as mentioned before, hello to Alex Newman in the chat as well. One of the few who I'm fortunate enough to know, despite the YouTube tag, who they actually are. Ooh. Which is, I said to you before, I've been doing commentary with another community, and the guy who I do it with knows exactly who they all are. And I'm just there like, oh yeah, so it's John Boy 3249. And then they'll go, oh yeah, it's John Smith. And I'm like, oh, okay. All right, cool.
Makes it a little hard to follow chat at times, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly. Especially when you've got so many random names as well. It's so difficult to tell people apart who they are. Anyway, the guys are being briefed at the moment and probably getting the aforementioned seeing to and slap on the wrist to make sure they're not going to be any naughty boys and girls this evening. But in the meantime, let's have a look through the standings following the conclusion of the second round a couple of weeks ago, starting with the AM category. So in the AM category, Jacob Grasmader of Pulse Simsport leads the way in that one. He has got a 4-point gap to Oscar Motan of Hexagon Nation Motorsport. Craig Hewlett is a further 2 points behind, with then Lisa Louise Keenan for further 2 points behind him. So 8 points separating the top 4, which is looking very interesting indeed. A further 6 points back is Raffaele Sanseverino. Colin Dunn a further 8 back off him, but he importantly didn't race at Indianapolis, so he is there on one race alone, obviously winning the AM class at Valencia a couple of weeks back. Rick Schutten, Nick Carianis round out the scoring drivers at the moment. Mark Brown and Jerry Armstrong are rounding out the top 10 with no points scored yet. However, will at least, provided they finish, see one more name appear on there next week, Chris, because as we've mentioned, we've got the rather interestingly named Chris Peacock in the server. Now, Chris, if you watch this back or you're in the chat, I'm desperate to know if that is your real name. Because if it is, like, genuinely, what were the parents thinking? It must be a meme name. It must be. I'm convinced of it. Silver standings, just as close in this one. Of course, they are going to be closer when there's 2 rounds in the books. However, it's still good to see all of this competitive nature coming out early doors. Matt Comiskey leads the way. Teammate of his, Terry Driscoll, is a further 6 points behind with 1 point back to James Jackson. Comiskey not in the server, I don't think. I can't see him anyway, so he's potentially be dropping off. Dan Whitehouse in P4, Mark Cooper in P5, and Jamie Buchanan 1 point behind in P6. Mark Neutling's in P7. Last year's AM champion Rob Besant is in P8, and then Steve Derrick and Mike Richards round out the top 10 there. And then finally, in the pro standings, it is level pegging in terms of the Pulse Simsport drivers. At the top of the standings, Marcus Hagel and Carolus Jurgelis, both on 52 points apiece. Christian Hamrabo is 2 points behind. All 3 of those drivers are looking quick and in the server this evening, so that's going to be a nice spicy affair. Ash Coupland, now of Pulse Simsport, of course, no longer of Positive Perception, sadly, is in 4th position, so it's a Pulse Simsport 1, 2 and 4. Russell Matthewson of Hexagon Nation Racing is in P5 with Thomas van der Stroys just behind him. Both of those were very close in the Indianapolis race a couple of weeks ago. Vladimir Popov with 35 points in 7th place. Mark Raddenbury, Posper Bossman and Carlo Durazio 8th and 9th on the same points. And then John Gray rounds out the top 10. Again, similar to Colin Dunn, did not run at Indianapolis, so he is there on his first round scoring alone. I think I can hear people out on the track, Chris. So what we'll do is we will hop straight over to the server as we say good evening to Rich Pixley in the chat as well. And we'll start to see some cars driving around this rather metronomic looking circuit in some anger.
You know, I've got to say, just based on those standings, because this is my first race back, it's good to see a lot of the very strong names that we've seen in the past, but it's really nice to see a lot of unfamiliar names for me.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been very fortunate. I have just realised this is free practice, so that's why not many people are out. We won't see them in too much anger at the moment, but we'll see them in a minute.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, so I was going to say, yeah, so loads of new names, which is, yeah, a really positive thing to see. We're really pleased to see that we're still getting new people in. We hit the plus 500 mark in terms of followers on SimGrid and people in the Discord over the last couple of weeks, which is a massive step for us. And of course, we'll bring all of those many people over to you guys over at Gridfinder soon, I am sure. But yeah, loads of new people, still people there as well, which is important. It's all good having new people in, but it's nice to see they're all still here. And the other thing I was going to say is the two winners of the Am and Silver classes. So Am class winner last season, Rob Besson, I mentioned, and Silver class winner Thomas van der Stroys, both actually kind of pulling up some trees in their new class as well, which is quite good to see. Van der Stroys, of course, we saw there in 6th in the pro class in the standings, and then Rob Besson 7th in the silver. It's good to see they've made the jump up, Chris, isn't it? Because that's the kind of thing that can be quite difficult when you're in a series like this with so many people.
Yeah, it's interesting because, you know, with any move up, no matter what discipline you're doing, whether it be racing or any other sport, right? If you move up to that next level, there's that just little bit of extra, okay, am I really qualified to be up here? You know, kind of second guessing yourself.
Yeah.
But luckily, it seems like the fundamentals are setting in really nicely. The pace is accurate, and they're just, you know, moving on up the grid. So hopefully that, you know, they can keep moving on up to pro and keep on making their sim racing career take off, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. It'd be nice to see, everyone getting a chance to prove their worth, and they'll get a chance to do that now because we've got a 20-minute qualifying session, which is very much underway. Predictions in the chat, please. Those of you who know who these people are, drop your thoughts into the chat on the stream. Let us know who you think is going to get pole position, and importantly, who is going to take the win. I'm going to have to consult my notes once more because I am woefully underprepared for this evening because I have been so busy. Mandatory fuel for this one, Chris, but no mandatory tyres. So for those of you who aren't aware, we have done a straight 60-minute race for every single race this season, so all 6 rounds. However, we're changing the pit stop requirements per race as well. So just something to take into account there as well. So not need to change tyres, which is important, but could be necessary with this new tyre model, obviously, since the 1.9 patch came out, Chris, because you can run through these quite quickly, can't you?
Yeah, I don't play ACC as much as I pay attention to it in general on leagues, so I have been reading about how the tire model, I don't know if I could say doesn't feel right or does feel right, but it's just so much different than they've been racing since the release of ACC that it's, you know, throwing some people for a little bit of a loop, if you will, on their strategies. It's just, it's difficult to predict sometimes, you know, and we try to, in the sim racing world, mimic what a real world race would feel like as close as possible, hence the simulation part of it. But you got to wonder sometimes if these developers, especially in like the ACC area, if they take a couple liberties just to make the racing that much more exciting, you know?
Yeah, I've heard people, I've heard people saying that it's arguably as close to what you'd expect the real life counterpart to be now, which is quite interesting. Yeah. It doesn't necessarily mean it works for me because I have lost a significant amount of pace since this new patch came out, probably partly through the lack of practice as well.
Well, yeah, lack of practice will do that naturally for us. Sim racing is one of those things that is the quintessential, if you don't use it, you lose it kind of a thing. And I'm very guilty of that during the summertime where I just take these just gaping breaks because, you know, you want to be outside, you want to be doing things while the weather is permitting you to be able to do those things. So you come back in the wintertime and go, wait a minute, what happened?
I'm how slow?
Is this the same game? They changed something. Never our fault, right?
Exactly. So we're following Marcus Hagel, current joint championship leader and of course pro championship reigning pro champion from last season. He is the choice of Alex in the chat for his pole position and presumably the race win. I'd be inclined to agree. However, I think there's some potential for some weather in the air, Chris. I was in the server before, and that's not going to be a valid lap. I was in the server before the practice session ticked over, before the server went properly live. It was very, very damp.
I love it when it rains. I just do. It changes so many aspects about the races. I'm not saying that the races are necessarily boring by any means when it's nice and sunny, perfect optimal conditions, but just that little bit of extra who knows what's going to happen mixes it up enough for it to have that just little extra layer on there. So, you know, I've always been pushing for Mark to install the instant rain button. He hasn't done it quite yet, but I'm still on a campaign for, hey, we need to spice things up, just boom, thunderstorm, whatever.
Yeah. 100%, I am with you on that. As we see, so first couple of times on the board, Corollas Jurgulis goes fastest at a 54.6 rather, and Raybo 200ths of a second behind. So setting a stall out, Chris, for what could potentially be an exciting qualifying. We've got Vojinovic, Dusan Vojinovic, who's one of our newer drivers, not a name I've seen before. So apologies, Dusan, if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly. I'm going with the confidence vibe. As Chris, you know, I tend to do a lot of the time. If you're not sure, say it with enough confidence and people will believe you.
Okay. It works the same way if you're like in a location, physical location, and you're not supposed to be there. As long as you're there with some conviction, no one's going to ask a question, right?
Exactly. I did my university degree solely off confidence and conviction, and it worked fine. So
there you go. Perfect.
I'm sure we'll be all good. Ollie Gio coming around the final corner. He is in one of our British GT pack cars. So you see the 1111 or 111 car of Russell Matthewson putting her fastest lap in. Ollie Gio comes through in 7th place. Looking fairly close at the moment, apart from that kind of little cluster of 3 at the top there of the standings. So yeah, Ollie in the EMI MCA Racing McLaren. I said this to Alex last week, Chris. I don't know if you know this livery because it is relatively dated and a very British, kind of quintessentially British livery. But if you go and Google it at any point, have a look at it, what it looked like on the old school McLaren F1 car. And I said this to Alex. It strikes me as really surprising as to how little the car looks different in the same livery, if that makes sense.
That does make sense.
It looks like it's exactly the same. I don't know why, but it's almost like the chassis never changed. It clearly has. You can see immediately it's a different car, but it just looks really different. It's very odd to look at.
You know, it gives me a lot of the old school days where everyone was sponsored by Marlboro.
Yeah, like the silk cut Jag and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
100%. 100%. It's a beautiful car, though. And one of a couple, I believe. I believe you've got someone else in the liveries. I think it is one of the people in the pit lane at the moment. So when he gets out on track, we'll have a look at it as Marcus Hagel sets his stall out. Of course, invalidated going through seam curve on the last lap. Doesn't on the last occasion and puts himself nearly half a second quicker, Chris, which is ridiculous considering he's only done one fastest sector according to my broadcast app. And it was only a 10th quicker than Matthewson behind him. So it's interesting to work that out, I dare you.
You know, we talk about this a lot in practice sessions, qualifying sessions, etc. How much sandbagging and how much strategy is really involved in these. You know, you and I have mentioned before that we are kind of a put your best lap as quick as possible, and then that's basically where you're going to be. There's not really much improvement during that period. But I wonder how many of these drivers have enough of that skill to be like, okay, I'm going to show that I'm at the top, but I'm not going to put my best lap out there until the very last second, you know? Yeah. I always wonder that when I'm watching these times, especially in this case where Marcus put up half a second of better time. You know, it seems like a lot at this stage of the game.
I mean, I was going to go and have a look around the rest of the grid, but I really want to see how this lap pans out, because if it carries on the way it is, I think we're going to be having another little jaw-dropping moment, because he's gained a chunk of time already as he crosses the line. Oh,
what in the world?
That is insane.
Oh, I forgot to tell you. Did you know that you get an extra 0.3 if you have a cool-looking livery?
This is very true. Now, I'm also going to go to this guy coming out of the final corner, Ash Coupland. He's looking quick as well. He's currently P5. This lap is going to put him into P2, which it does. Also gets into the 53s. I don't think I saw a single 53 in that practice session before. This is ludicrously quick times that we're seeing.
These guys are really putting the pedal to the metal to sound, you know, all cliche. But that's some fast times there. So Ash, with, you know, seeing that guy put a 53, put his best out there. Well, maybe his best out there, as we were saying. And he's only 200ths off. So it's he probably has a little bit of extra there. If these times keep falling like this, he's got a little bit of extra on there.
Yeah, definite sandbagging from Ash, because he said in the Discord server about 15 minutes ago he hopes it rains because he's not very quick.
Oh, grief. And then he puts up
Make
that
of
time.
that, yeah, make of that what you will, boys and girls in the chat and watching the stream. Alex saying it's Hegel scares me. This makes my 55s look bad. I mean, Alex, I'm sure, Chris, I can speak on behalf of both of us. I don't think we're anywhere near any of these times that are being set at the top of the timing chart at the moment.
No, not even close.
That is utterly ridiculous. Interestingly, there's a lot of people improving, apart from anyone in the top 10. Dan Quinson in 11th, he's gaining about half a second on his time at the moment. He's about halfway down the Mistral straight, I believe. A couple of attempts for Chris Peacock. Again, being very careful how I say it. Colin done a few tenths up. Mark Neutling's the man on your screen in the Tony the Tiger livery. He's got a few tenths on his time. Nick Karayanis is over half a second up. Rich Knight improving. Everyone realistically outside of the top sort of 10 is tending to be on a positive trajectory in terms of it. So although we've got a rather sizable gap across the grid at the moment, that is going to close very quickly, I feel.
Yeah, if history repeats itself from last season, we were always pleasantly surprised with the tiny gap all the way up to like place 15 in some of these qualifying rounds. So we could see some tightening of these gaps real soon here.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe this is meant to be the other British GT livery, because I know it's the Mantara Ferrari. Sadly, doesn't appear to have loaded in properly, which is a bit of a shame, because I'm 99% sure I have it loaded, but sadly we don't have an option. If you go on to the Positive Perception Twitter channel, it's at PosPer Tweets, Tweets.
What is Twitter?
You can actually see. Oh,
I
sorry.
don't have a Twitter app anymore. How do I get to that?
Chris, my sincerest apologies for getting the name convention wrong. If you can go onto X, it's just a really stupid thing. You go onto X, then you can go and find at PosPer. We probably need to change the handle to PosPer X, don't we? Really?
Yeah. What do you? You can't be tweets anymore. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
PosPer X's sounds very untoward.
Yeah, that doesn't
feel happy about that.
Doesn't sound like it's a racing themed account, does it?
No, exactly. It sounds like something that you'd see on like MTV or something instead. But yeah, if you do go onto our X profile, we should call it its official name.
Yeah.
Then you'll be able to see that Mantara Ferrari. It's that beautiful kind of block rainbow coloured car, which I can't remember what the car was when it was originally done. It's not a Ferrari. It was like an old school. It's one of them. When you see it, you're like, oh, it's that car. But I can't tell you what it is. You know what I mean?
We got Ace's XU in the chat. I don't like it in conversation, but in the end, it doesn't actually matter to me as long as I get the same kind of content. But yeah, it's weird saying, "Did you post it on X?"
Yeah, I'm like you. I don't really care.
Yeah.
Like it's not going to change my life whether I call it X or Twitter.
It does sound weird at this point, and I'm sure Twitter sounded weird in the beginning of its lifespan, but at least there can be some branding around that. It feels like X is going to be really hard to figure out how to make it a brand. But hey,
100%. What are you going to do? You're going to add X's if you like subscribe? Is that because that could get really weird really quickly? Let's just
anyway, moving on.
Andrew Priadko, newcomer to the series, first race this evening, appropriately chosen the number 1, does a good job in that lap, puts himself up into P3. I was about to say was improving. He actually found about half a second in that final cluster of corners, which is very impressive to say the least. Shows you how important that last couple of corners, isn't it, Chris? Because if you can get that kind of little sweep through from the final 2 corners, so from Delator to Dupont, if you get it right, you can gain so much time just getting the entry into that final corner right.
Yeah, finding half a second just sounds ludicrous to me, because when we're out there putting our best laps in, I'm like, ooh, I found 1/10. I'm doing great. That was so much better. But finding half a second, that is definitely, I guess I'd have to say that must have been some sandbagging in the beginning. Maybe it's some tire, management in there as well, but half a second's a lot. And you're right, though. If you hit it correctly on this track, it just kind of, it's that, as they say in the Ferrari v Ford movie, it's the perfect lap sometimes, and you just feel it, and it flows perfect, and you go, wow, that felt fabulous. I've only had like maybe one of those in my entire life, but I know the feeling.
Yeah, it's a fleeting feeling, but great when it happens. Russell Matthieson there putting up a 154.080, so he goes third. Seeing improvements around the outer skirts of the top 10 now as well. Karolis Jurgulis coming down the Mistral straight at the moment. He is gaining. Now, importantly, he's actually gaining as he goes down the straight as well. So that suggests he's got a better exit out of the De Camp and Saint-Bon in the Porsche. Goes through that scene curve. It's so weird. I've driven this in a GT3 car, and I've also done it on the latest, or not the latest F1 game, sorry, the last year's one. Difference between the two is ridiculous, especially when you go from the F1 car to the GT3, because you actually have to brake for that right-hander, and it feels very strange.
F1 cars are so much fun to drive in the sim, just because they're all, especially in the F1 game, I guess I'll say the F1 game is very forgiving, it feels. So like if you miss a braking point in the F1 game, it doesn't feel as punishing to if you miss a brake point in a GT3 and ACC or a GT4 and ACC. If you miss a brake point in a GT4, you're off the track. You're hopefully, if you're here, at least you're getting back on the track without damage. It's such a different feeling. And honestly speaking, I feel like it's more gratifying to drive the GT3s.
Yeah,
I would say.
No, I get what you mean.
Because the GT3s are fast. GT4s are fast as well, but I don't know. They feel. What's the right term I'm looking for? I guess it's just more difficult for me personally to drive. The GT3s have a good mixture of difficulty plus forgiveness that is just in between F1 and GT4 for me. So.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I prefer a GT3 by a massive amount because I just simply I'm a downforce kind of guy. Like I need downforce to be able to really kind of get my head around a car. The GT4s, I really struggle with them because there's that, it's like all that mechanical grip, isn't it? Where you kind of feel like you need to throw the car into a corner, and you need to have that momentum, and you need to minimize slip and all that sort of stuff. And I am awful at it. Like,
me too. Yeah,
I need to
100%.
be able to throw it in 10 times out of 10, put 100% into it, and if I don't, then that's fine. But just can't get on with it.
The one thing that is kind of unfortunate about me being such I guess I would say so low on the amateur scale, more of a casual racer, is that GT3s also typically have the better grids where it's the drivers who take it a little more seriously, so it's a lot harder on, I guess, my ego in a way than a GT4 race. So I end up racing a lot in GT4 only because the competition level is completely different than GT3s.
Yeah, 100%. I feel like GT3s are a bit more accessible as well because they are, in my opinion, a bit easier to drive.
Yeah, okay. I can see that.
But I can understand, I mean, obviously, I suppose the theory is the GT4, for a word, is the more, it's kind of like it's not an entry level because they're still quick, but compared to a GT3, and ultimately, if you were to compare it to a Formula 1 car, albeit completely different style of car, there's a feeder kind of level, isn't there, really, if you think about it? It is your F4, your F3, your F2, your F1 sort of thing, so it's an interesting one. But there you go. Well, Colin Dunn there, good time from him. Puts himself quite comfortably up into P12 with 2 minutes left off the qualifying session. Just seen a yellow flag, but that was someone off the track at the time. They've decided to return to the garage. Colin Dunn being followed by Mark Raddenbury in the BMW. Now that BMW, Mark's been telling me, is very, very quick in a straight line. Let's have a quick look at the speed trap figures. I'm seeing Miles Dixon topping out at 288 kilometers an hour down that back straight, which is, I mean, I'm terrible at conversions. All I'm going to say is that's pretty quick.
That's pretty rapid. Yeah, that's pretty quick.
Going to very quickly do that on my phone. 178.955 miles an hour. I don't really know why we needed it to 3 decimal places, but
hey,
let's call it 179 for the sake of the argument. That is super quick.
So we're now in the last about minute and a half here. Here's where I'm curious if we're going to see a lot of jumbling around of these standings. For some reason, I'm kind of leaning on no, and I can't really place why. The times, the placements seem to be pretty good where they're at right now. But I want to see if anyone does something magical and comes up from like 8th all the way to like 2.
Yeah,
That's what I want to see, is someone just completely be sandbagging and just jump 10 places.
100%.
Miles Dixon went up
it,
just 1 place there, so not a crazy amount of gain, but a gain is still a gain, so that's nice.
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen some gains across. You see Mark Raddenberry. I mean, Mark was improving, but he's now invalidated his lap. I noticed the fact they've switched in their positions for him and Colin, so clearly a bit of admin team towing action, for want of a better phrase, down the back straight. Andrew Predko is the main of the top 10.
Ooh, there's one. Adam just went up 6 slots. Adam, number 74, Oster. This is, of course, the one that I was asking you about. He just went up 6 spots.
Ostrachars, I believe. Again,
Ostrachars?
Adam, if you watch this back and you want us to confirm it, then we do have a pronunciation chat in the Discord server, of course, so we'd like to make sure everything is pronounced correctly. So Priadko's the only one improving in the top 10. He's a few tenths up on his time at the moment. We'll keep an eye on him. Marcus Hagel isn't improving, but doesn't really need to at the moment. No. Coupland, Matthieson both in the pits. Hamrebo on a lap, but not improving, importantly. But he's near the back end of the lap, so likelihood is, unless he really pulls it out in his last couple of corners, he's probably not going to get himself up the order at all. Priadko's the one to watch. He's going to cross the line now. Put P4.
Ooh, there we go.
For Priadko. So he gets himself. He jumps Hamrebo. As the
Ollie Gio
aforementioned
just jumped
Swede.
a bunch as well.
Yeah, across the line doesn't improve Hamrebo, so he's not going to be. He's going to be starting P5 at best. Who else have we got coming around? Harry Tuominen is doing a very good job of improving. He is going to shift himself right up. He could be, Chris, the one you are looking out for.
The one I'm
if he
looking for.
continues that trajectory. Let's see what he does as he crosses the line. Mark Raddenberry improving as well. We'll come to him in a second. He's a few tenths up, as is Adam Ostrachars. So we'll watch both of those across the line in just a second as Tuominen crosses the line up into P15 of that one. So he lost a little bit of time off the last couple of corners, but enough to get himself right up the order. Raddenberry comes around the final corner. Ostrachar's right behind him. They're both gaining by around about the same amount of time. So what will happen to these guys? Raddenberry up 1 position in the end, unfortunately for him. Ostrachar's up by 6 positions, I think that was, up into P13. So as it stands, Chris, Hagel on pole, Coupland second, Matthieson third, and Priadko in 4th. Do you know what? It didn't feel as close in the times as it normally does. And I don't say that as a bad thing, but it felt like it was a little bit less clustered. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. I think the last race that I was present for commentary, I think the top 15 people were all within 1 second of each other. So we have a little bit more of a spread here. But to be fair, we also have more drivers than we did. So that could cause some issues there with traffic and stuff. Even if you are on one of those hot laps, traffic does have a tendency to alter the way that you're going to drive, as opposed to if you were on an open track.
Yeah, absolutely indeed. Right, I'm going to get on my segue. I've just sped up the grid off screen so we can start doing our classic grid walk for the session. Get on the old pos per segue, as I like to call it. Oh my word, I need to make sure I drive a little bit up, because when they do the setup things, you know what happens when you're in the car in ACC and you drop it and goes up and down on the jacks and you do the setup thing. If you go too low in the server, it bounces. People do it, and it's very distracting, very difficult to watch.
What do you mean cars aren't supposed to jump on the grid? What are you talking about?
I know, it's especially when there's no one around them. It's very strange. So I just want to call out Mark Raddenberry before we go into this, because for those of you who weren't aware, Mark did his first kind of proper official stream last week. Him and Alex Newman are streaming and broadcasting the GT4 series that we're doing, which is alternately to the GT3 Chris that obviously you and I are doing. They did their first one at Laguna Seca last week. I was super pleased with them because they did a fantastic job. And I just want to call out the fact that Mark, I watched the stream and he was fumbling around, he goes, "Does David do that grid walk thing?" I watched him do it. I sat there and I felt like a proud dad watching him do the grid walk.
You're doing it, son.
Yeah, it was such a pleasing moment to watch. It was great. So yeah, should I call it out before we do it ourselves? But yeah, as I was saying, let's run through the grid for this one ahead of this evening's race. As I said before, 60 minutes is the tour for this one. Stop for fuel, a minimum of 1 litre, so they can put as much as they want. Essentially, you can either fill it or you can do it half and half, and see how you get on. On pole is going to be Marcus Hagel of Pole Simsport. Ash Coupland in the 88 Pole Simsport car sits alongside him. Russell Mathieson in 3rd place in the Hexagon Nation car alongside newcomer Andrew Priadko. In the Mad Panda Racing AMG GT3, we've then got Christian Hamraber in the Hexagon Nation car, the 22, alongside Carolus Jurgelis, who's joint championship leader in the pro class in 5th and 6th. Got Dan Crinson, newcomer, in a lovely, that is a beautiful livery, I have to say. I know that's an in-game one, but that's still very, very nice. The Iron Lynx car in P7, and then Dusan Vojinovic is on P8 on the grid. Terry Driscoll and Miles Dixon of Pole Simsport round out the top 10. Further down the grids, I have to speed this up because I'm talking too quickly, clearly. It's Fabio Gallimini with Colin Dunn leading the AM class by quite a distance in P12. Andrew Ostrichars and Vladimir Popov on row 7 of the grid, with Ollie Geel and Harry Tuominen just behind them. Mike Richards, who should be in the rainbow-coloured Ferrari, and Thomas van der Struijs in the Lamborghini. Not a good showing from him this time out compared to last time at Indy in P18. And then John Gray and Carlo Dorazio rounding out your top 20. As we continue down, we've got then Ivo van Collenberg in 21st, with Chris Peacock in that Porsche on the left-hand side of your screen in 22nd. Mark Raddenbury and Matt Comiskey on the 12th row of the grid in 23rd. And 24th, Mark Cooper and Oscar Motan in the Hexagon Nation Machine racing car in P's 25 and 26. We've then got Jamie Buchanan and Chris Jenkins in 27th and 28th place. Lisa Louise Keane and James Jackson 29th and 30th. James Jackson not having the best of qualifying sessions considering his pace in the practice server earlier. We've then got Mark Neutlings and Steve Derrick. There is that bouncing I was telling you about as they start to get their setup sorted. There we go. Here we go. Get up again. Let's go a bit higher. Nick Carianis, Raffaele Sanseverino in that yellow Ferrari on the right-hand side of your screen. Michael de Groot in P36. And rounding out your grid, Thomas Hackanson in the BMW in P37, Chris.
37 drivers.
That is insane.
That is some field. Wow.
That is unbelievable. Sorry, just give me a chance to get back onto the helicam before we kick things off. Now, what we're also going to do is we're going to bring in one of the guys from the chat into the session, just have a quick chat with us on the formation. Let me move him across into here. Colin Dunn, good evening to you, sir. P12 on the grid. That's a good qualifying for you. You must feel pretty pleased with that.
I'm very pleased with this. Having a bit of a nosebleed with this altitude, though.
How was the qualifying session for you? Because we were talking, Chris and I were talking about it before, and it feels like it's a little bit more spread, but the mid pack of the grid is still very, very close. So, what were you expecting coming into that? Were you expecting something around that kind of P12 to 15, or is that gloriously higher than you would have ever expected?
This is much higher than I expected. I mean, we did see in practice, I had a bit of a blinder that put me into about 18th. So even this is a shock compared to that.
And how is the car to drive from your perspective, that Lamborghini? Because it seems like it does appear to be a relatively quick one round here. How is it feeling in your capable hands?
Pretty good. A little bit loose, but I think I've got it tamed just about.
Certainly done a good job of taming it however you've done it. If you're coming up in P12, you've got 10 positions down to your next class competitor in Mr. Peacock, so you've got a nice bit of breathing room off the start.
Oh, that's good to know. Thank you. I did get a little bit of help.
We did, yeah. So I noticed you repaid the favour. I'm assuming you're on about Mark, because I noticed that you repaid the favour to him at the end of the session, only for him to invalidate the lap. I'm assuming he mentioned in the chatter when you were there in the qualifying.
Exactly that.
Lovely stuff. And I'd be foolish not to ask you, as you go down what must feel like the longest straight in eternity, especially on a formation lap. But P12 on the grid, mentioned that a few times, but what for you is going to be a good result tonight? Let's forget about the class, because essentially if you can keep yourself clean, you should in theory have a nice little gap between them. But overall, what are you kind of looking for in terms of an end goal tonight?
Top 20, really. I'm not expecting to hold the position.
I would have more confidence in your abilities, young man, because if that qualifying session's anything to go by, I think you'll have absolutely no issue holding on to that. And who knows? Get your nose clean. Never know what might happen.
Cheers, man.
No worries, buddy. Have a great race. Good luck to you, Colin. And yeah, hopefully see you on the other side.
Thank you. See you later.
There you go. Colin done there. Lovely to have chat, Chris, isn't it, with some of the guys. I was actually about to ask him about his strategy, but I kind of felt like he was maybe getting his head in the zone a little bit, so I didn't want to interrupt anything.
Yeah, I'm the commentator that's like, so what's your pit strategy? And are you going to go for new tires? What are you thinking? Trying to dig as much information out as possible. You took the more, I guess we'll say, gentle route with that one, which I'm sure is appreciated by the drivers, especially Colin over there with his really good performance in P12.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic job from him. Yeah, like I say, 10 positions back to Peacock in 22nd. Behind him is the next man in class. So as it stands, Marcus Hagel, pole position sitter and first in pro class. Andrew Priadko, first in silver class. He is in P4. Dan Quinton in P7 is a second in the silver class. And yeah, the aforementioned Colin Dunn in P12, but first in the AM class with a nice healthy gap behind him as well. So is the difficulty when you get new people coming in, because you don't know where to class them. I wonder if Mr. Priadko might be in a white coloured class on the left hand side of the timing tower by the end of this race. Anyway, we've got an hour's journey for you. One pit stop for fuel throughout this evening. We'll wait to see who's going to come out on top as we wait for the green light to go. As here we are, with green light and underway here at Paul Ricard. It's Ash Coupland chasing Marcus Hagel down to the first corner. It looks like Coupland might potentially have the jump on his teammate going into the S's for the first time. Priadko up into second place into the first corner. Contact between him and Coupland though. See if that's managed to impact either of them. Coupland's dropped down a couple of positions. Priadko has managed to hold on to P2, and that has got Matthewson back up into P3, and Hamrebo gets a position as well. As it looks like further down the grid, there's been a little bit of contact. We've got Tuomanen turned. Van der Stroys has been turned as well. We'll see if we can get some replays of that to see what has happened there. See, this is a replay off the first bit. This is a replay off the start with Priadko and Coupland. You see a little bit of contact there going into the first corner, and that then picks up a couple of other ones as well. See what else we've got. So this is Steve Derrick. We can see a bit of contact between him and a few other cars as well. This is probably where we've seen Tuomanen spun round as well, you would expect, coming through that first corner. Is it a bit of a bunch up there? I'm not sure what the contact was there, to be completely honest with you.
That almost looked like just some netcode issues. I mean, there was a little bump in there, but that's it. I didn't really see anything too terrible. Yeah, that little bump with the Gulf livery there, and then a couple of more for the correction, but nothing terrible. And like we were saying in the actual qualifying / practice sections, plenty of runoff in here so that you can, regain your position back, save your race, and not just be into a wall or into a sand trap of some sort on the side.
Absolutely. This is a battle for first. I just noticed, so I noticed that Hagel was flashing his lights coming through this left hand. You see him just happening there. I noticed that, and then obviously noticed that Priadko was up into first as well. Just wanted to see what happened. A little bit of a hip check from the number one Mad Panda Motorsport car. Not the harshest move in the world, but one you'd maybe feel a little bit hard done by if you were that if you were in Marcus Hagel's position, you'd think.
Yeah, if you're on the receiving side of that little hip check in there, it's just like if you were on the football pitch, you'd be like, hey, what are you doing, man? Leave me alone. But, comes by it honestly in that giant rear end of a Merc that's out there right now. That thing is quite hefty to haul around. But surprisingly, it feels kind of nimble when you're behind the wheel, which is a very odd feeling when you look at the car and then experience the drive.
100%. It's got good weight distribution, and it's working for Priadko very much so in his first couple of laps. He's almost 2 seconds clear of Hagel on the coming onto the second lap or second time down the back straight. This is the battle for P2. That is Russell Mathiesen closing up on the rear wing of Marcus Hagel. This is that slipstream we have mentioned a few times. That toe that we talked about in qualifying, that is going to be Mathiesen going to try and make the move around the outside of Seaton Curve. He's up alongside, he's slightly ahead as they come into the braking zone. Oh, contact between the two of them. I mean, that was coming from an absolute mile off. That looked like, I mean, that is very much a bit more contact there. We've got Terry Driscoll being caught up in there as well. Colin Dunn has somehow made it through.
That rejoined.
There's a rejoin there from Mathiesen as well. Bit of contact between Richards and Dunn. Dunn just shifts a little bit outride as a result of that as well. He's actually carrying the fastest lap off the first lap of the race, as there is, I think that was Mike Richards sensibly and rather fairly just giving that position back. As you can see there, the Mercedes of John Gray going around the outside as Richards gets a bit of a swapper on. Coming through there. Popov getting involved in this as well. I'm really struggling, Chris, to figure out what on earth is going on here because there's so much action.
There's so much passing, contact, just all kinds of things happening right now. It's hard to keep up with.
Yeah, absolutely. It's Mark Raddenbury up into, what's that? Up into P12 or P11 now. Oh no, so P12, sorry. He's holding off from Andrew Ostrachars just behind, who's got Ollie Giel for company under pressure as well. There's another yellow flag further down. Marcus Hagel in the pit lane. Not sure whether that is a return to garage or just a standard pit stop. We'll have to wait and see on that one. Chris, I don't know where to look.
Yeah, P2 and 3 right there may have just ruined their entire race. There's still a lot of time, but oof, that was rough. And that was telegraphed from a mile away from that helicopter cam. Knew right away when they were lined up that way that contact was obviously going to happen.
100%. It was one of those like 2 into 1 was never going to go. I don't think any party was at fault. It very appropriately mentioned Ace's boy in the chat talking about the fact that's the second time in 2 races that Hagel's actually been caught up in an incident. He was caught up with an incident with, I think it was Gasolina from the last round at Indianapolis, where he just got a little bit of a nudge from behind, and that made him serve his pit stop early doors like he has done on this occasion. So we'll have to keep an eye out whether he can do another display like he did last time to come back for P4 in the end. We'll see. And then Peter Phillips, what have I missed? Go K Jurgelis in the Porsche, who's currently in P5, so the third of a Pulse Sim Sport trio. You've basically missed a very action-packed first couple of laps, Peter, to be quite honest with you. Some of it a bit worrisome, some of it just brilliant racing, but yeah, I mean, I don't even, there's so much, I'm seeing so much, more contact there.
Yeah, brakes.
I thought that was, go on, yeah, hold your brakes. Let's see what's happened here. This is Fabio Gallimini, he's going very, very wide. Oh, that's, okay, yeah, just very unfortunate there.
Those 3 are very happy. Oof.
Yeah, that's unfortunate, and that is a little bit naughty from Mr. Peacock. Now, I've just noticed he's just elected to completely ignore the rejoin protocol coming through. I think that was Virage de Bendor is the actual corner name, as we see Elisa Louise parked up on the exit of pit lane. Not sure whether she's going to get moving anytime soon. Marcus Hagel with a stop-go 30 penalty as well, so that is going to be a massively detrimental impact to him. I know
Lucia's struggle right there, where she's just like, "There's so many cars. When do I come back on the track? What's happening?"
It is not the way that you want to have an exit from pit lane when there's that many people around. That is just incredible.
No safe spot to join. You just have to watch all of them just fly by you and watch you fall down that ladder. Oof.
Yeah, exactly. All dry at the moment, Peter. Yes, no signs of rain, despite our willingness, Chris, I would say, for it to rain, because I think we both like to see a little bit of adverse weather.
Yeah, if any of you have heard this duo commentate before, you know that we definitely like our rainy conditions, that's for sure. And to my knowledge, we've only had 1 race together. I think it was at Spa, appropriately, that it was raining.
Yes, in the infamous Belgian microclimate that is Spa.
Yeah.
I was actually thinking that. I was going to get people in the chat to remind us, but yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think it was Spa, because we had that. It basically drizzled for the whole race, if I remember.
Yes.
I'd like to see a bit of changeable conditions, to be honest. I don't think we're going to get that tonight, though, unless we see some rain coming in the final half an hour of this one. Alex is wondering, stop go 30 for what? I can only assume it will be speeding in the pit lane. Of course, sadly, we can't see what those penalties are for, which is a bit of a shame. But I would assume it will be to do with that. We don't live steward these races, so it's not going to be for anything that he's been involved in terms of incidents. As we look a little bit further down, the page you see Peacock in the pit lane alongside Hagel, who's now serving that penalty. Hackinson has gained, 15 positions off the start, Chris? So good start from him, obviously starting from the back of the grid. He's now ahead of Quinton, who's had a bit of a horror show. He started, P7, as we see Gallimini pitting in the background. Hackinson having a little bit of a choo-choo train, as I've been told I have to say at in the stream at least once this evening. He's got a few cars just sitting behind him, probably waiting for that back straight and just trying to get a bit of a tow, you'd think.
Yeah, definitely. There's optimal places to pass on Paul Ricard without a doubt. That straight is 17 miles? No.
It probably definitely feels like it's that on the formation lap anyway.
Right. It just feels so. Even in an F1 car, when you're going over 200 miles an hour, it still is like, is this going to end? Like, where's the end of this straight? What's going on here?
I'd love to see, because I see there's so many different configurations of this track, as I'm sure most of you will know. And if you didn't know, it's quite obvious because you can just see where the blue stripes like disappear. I would love to see what would happen in this if they had the F1 style kind of chicane, the one that's halfway down the back straight. Yep. I'd love to see how that would change GT3 racing as well. Be very interested to see.
That would be interesting.
You see, John Gray has lost a few positions there. It looks like he's lost that all on his own. No one around him.
Yeah, just by himself. A little hot into the corner. Yeah, there you go. But
it's interesting. I don't think I've ever
off. Like, just you can go into town for some donuts, come back and start racing again.
I mean, the way he did that, it almost looked like he'd done his own line. It's almost like he's gone, actually, do you know what? I'm going to input a little 360 into this.
Just a little style. Here we go.
Yeah. Style points for Mr. Gray there, but not what he wants, because he's right now in front of the gaggle of cars, which is Oscar Motar, Matt Comiskey, Ollie Giel and Chris Jenkins. So he is going to have a little bit of work to do in those rearview mirrors, you would think, and he's probably got some rather warm tyres in there as well. Look back, still got... In fact, we've lost one driver, I believe. I can't quite see it. In fact, it's Peacock we've lost. So I mentioned this earlier, Chris. I feel like I'm curse of the commentator, but I mentioned that we would have another name on the AM standings by next time we stream. We won't, because he's not going to finish. So sad times for Mr. Peacock. Great times, though, for this man, Colin Dunn, who has had an absolute stormer of a start. Considering he wanted a top 20, Chris, he's not far off getting himself cemented into the top 10.
We just talked about the commentator's curse, buddy. We just mentioned that, and you're going to go out here congratulating someone. What are you doing? Be careful with that thing. That
I
wand
have made
is
better decisions.
Ooh, that wand is powerful. But yes, Colin Dunn doing amazing in his seat there, probably just grinning ear to ear because, like he said in the pre-interview during the formation lap, he just wants a top 20 and he's happy with that. So probably loving life right now.
Yeah, big time. Got a nice gap of what about 1.4 seconds back to Mike Richards behind, who's got then a crew of cars behind him, forming of Raddenbury, Popov and Ostrachars just in behind him as well. So Mike is really going to have to be doing a lot more of watching his rearview mirrors than he is looking forwards. Otherwise, he's potentially going to be losing some positions. A bit of contact further back. That's Jamie Buchanan causing a yellow flag up back there as well. Let's see what happened here. Again, he's on his own, so I imagine this might be... We're seeing a lot of this, Chris, aren't we? I mean, this is going to do the tyres no good whatsoever, but that was almost... Yeah.
I wonder if there's something going on with that corner, because I think that's the third or fourth car that we've seen just go a little too heavy into that corner there and then lose their back end. So I wonder if there's something going on in there that we just aren't privy to, possibly. Yeah, and it's not like it's one style of car. It's been the Merc, it's been the Lambo now. I think a McLaren spun at one point. So it's been a couple different cars there. So don't know if it's just a little bit overzealous on the gas pedal and missing a brake point, but it does seem to be pretty common over there.
Black and orange flag, oil on track. There's been a spillage. Or was it the black flag with the orange circle is oil, I think. I've never done my ARDS test or whatever it is to get your racing license, but I'm fairly certain that's the case. Just bringing our attention back to one of the drivers a bit further down the grid, but with good interest. James Jackson has already served his pit stop, Chris. So he is the first of the drivers first running of the drivers, sorry, I should say, who has served his pit stop. You see San Severino into the pit lane on the right side of your screen there as well. He's going to be our control, isn't he? Because he's going to be the one we're going to look at when we start to see some of probably the outskirts of the top 10 coming in for their stops later on.
Yeah. What's your strategy? Early pit, late pit? I know we always talk about it, but what are you doing in Paul Ricard today with the current conditions how they are?
It is a tough one. I think for me, because the minimum that you have to refuel is 1 litre. I'm filling for the race, and then I'm filling up 1 litre, and I'm probably coming out with maybe, I don't know, 2 or 3 laps of surplus fuel at the end. But I'd rather have that and then minimise the time I'm stopped in the pit lane, rather than have to maybe go half and half and split it that way. So when I'd pit, to be completely honest, it would depend entirely on what the race is doing at the time. Like I can see Mathiasen there. He's pitted, but he's just lost the position to Jürgelis on screen. So I wonder if there's an impact in that taken into account as well. So for me, it's very much circumstantial. If I'm having a good race and I've got some good pace and I'm doing a good job of it and I'm following someone who maybe is a little bit quicker than me, I'm going to run it as long as I can. If I get caught up in an incident, I'll probably just cut my arses early and just get some clear air.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you. Keeping the pit stop as short as possible, so adding that 1 liter in there seems to be, in my mind at least, it sounds like the better strategy at this point, because I don't really think you would gain all that much by having a very slightly lighter car in the midsection of the race, to be honest with you. And the way that I function, of course this means nothing to the drivers that are on the moment, but the way that I function is I kind of get into that little groove state where the more time I have just throwing laps together, the better and better and better I will get. So if I was to split it up into 2 equal parts, it feels like I would overall be kind of hindering my drone out and just drive performance, if you will.
100%. I'm very much with you. I can see that Terry Driscoll is having an absolute horror show in his race at the moment. This is him coming up to Seeing Curve. That is, I believe that's Priadko, the leader in front of him. Is he going to lose it? Oh, he's lost it before he's even entered the frame.
That was kind of a cool shot, though, there with the little bit of a drift look coming right behind the camera. But yeah, just lost the back end again.
Whoa! Oh my God!
That was... he just had to wait 1 more car, too, and he had clear air. That was dangerous. Holy smokes.
Oh my God. I think that was Miles Dixon. If I am him, I need a new pair of pants.
Yeah, he's going to have to pit for an underwear
doubt
change.
About it. Oh my God.
Oh.
I genuinely didn't expect it. I referenced this in, I don't think it was the last race here. I think it was another broadcast that I've done recently. Have you seen the MotoGP one at the Red Bull Ring, where I think it's Valentino Rossi comes up the hill into turn, I think it's technically turn 3, isn't it? That tight right-hander at the top of the hill. And he has a bike fly across his front camera. Have you seen it?
I have not seen that.
Have a look at it after this.
Okay.
It is exactly like what I imagine Miles Dixon has probably just experienced. Because he basically, this bike just flies across him at about 180 mile an hour because the guy's fallen off and has lost control. And if he'd gone any quicker around that corner, he is getting collected and he is probably in a serious amount of strife.
Wow. Oh.
And that's what I felt like Dixon would have felt there. That was unbelievable.
So that's one benefit too. Obviously, triples are very nice and you have a good amount of peripheral vision. But one thing that I love about like racing in VR, because I prefer VR personally, is that I can literally turn around and like look down the track to see if people are coming to try to rejoin safely, because sometimes some of those situations are created because maybe you don't pay attention to the track map and you're like, oh, it's clear now. So you hit the gas and go, oh, nope, it wasn't clear. And all you do is just hope and pray you're not collecting that person coming straight at your door.
Exactly.
Ooh.
Because that was terrifying.
That was...
I cannot stress enough how much that shocked me. And I don't, like, I'm not trying to sound like a ridiculously like melodramatic or anything, but I just didn't expect it. The way that he rejoined, it was almost like it was done with so much kind of not like almost confidence that I almost just assumed no one was there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I could see where you're coming from on that, definitely.
Oof.
There's something to be said about the adrenaline after you spin, because your brain is not necessarily at like 100% functional level. You're at like a 50-50 where you're like, I got to get back on the track. I saved it. I'm good to go.
Yeah.
Let's get going. And then, something when you're thinking that is like, oh, well, I saw a car go by, so I'm just going to squeeze in here. Not necessarily thinking 100% of, oh, right, there's probably another one on the way. That was scary. That was scary.
Vojinovic up the inside of Gio. Gio didn't look like he made that too difficult, it seemed.
Pretty easy work
Kinda
there.
Left the door very much open. To be fair, see Van der Stroys
almost held the door for him.
Yeah, he pretty much went, yeah, through you go, good sir. Here's the invite. Here's the door code, and away you go.
Yeah.
Whether that was the plan or not remains to be seen. That McLaren is pretty quick in a straight line, but the BMW, I mean, it looks to me...
Oh, it could have been, go ahead and go by, I'll use you as a on the straight, and here we go.
I think Vojinovic might have a little bit more pace on the table than Ollie does. In fact, looking at the fastest lap time of both of them, and the last lap time, fastest lap times for Vojinovic are 55.9, last lap time are 56.2. Fastest lap time for Ollie is a 57.5, and his last lap was a 57.5 as well. So maybe it was a sensible move from Ollie. Don't get held up with him, don't lose time, and like you say, follow his lines and ultimately kind of get him to drag you along a little bit. Seems like a sensible move.
Interestingly, if you think about it, so he's kind of sitting back behind Neudlings a little bit. So what if he was struggling to catch up and he knows the BMW has a insane amount of, straight line speed, as Mark Raddenberry was saying. Maybe it's a go ahead and go by me, tow me so that I can get back up with the next person, and then I can make another move here because I have 40 minutes to go.
Exactly. It's the long game. It's not. This is, although technically in the GT3 world, I believe this would be classed as a sprint race. It is still an hour long. You can't throw your toys out the pram early doors and just kind of throw your weight around, really, can you? You've got to be sensible. So no, makes complete sense. Andreas Pettersson, just to come back to it, because I wanted to make sure I didn't ignore his chat message, because I wasn't ignoring it. Just confirming the fact that the rejoin that we talked a little bit about already, rather scary.
Everyone's collective. Whoa! Wow.
Yeah, I will be very much dropping Miles a message after this in the channel, in the Discord, and saying to him, how on earth was that from your perspective? Because it looked terrifying. So here is Mark Raddenberry, in a rather lofty, sick place.
Yeah,
you'll see there. But in fairness to him, running good pace. He's not holding back at all. He's on a 56.5. The two behind him a little bit quicker. You see Popov getting around the outside. Hopefully, won't have a repeat of the what was it? The Hagel and someone else. I can't remember who it was. My name's escaped me now. No, don't, because Popov just comes back in there. Managed to get around it. Hagel and who was it? Completely escaped me. In fact, it might be someone who's no longer in the server, to be fair. That might be why I don't recognise who it is. We see a change for P2 as well. Coupland overtaken by Dixon. Again, the former running a little bit quicker at the moment. So with them being teammates, you might think, Chris, maybe some team orders in play there.
Maybe some team orders. Yeah, I'd agree with that. Watching this battle with Mark right here is really confirms that straight line speed that he was talking about before, because that Audi went around. Of course, he goes into the pits now, so we don't get any more of that great action. But that Audi passed him on the corner pretty convincingly. But then when they got to the next straight, the BMW just no draft, no extra help, nothing. Just engine all the way, just outpaced it. So
just powered away, yeah.
That straight line speed, and if there's ever a track that you want that crazy straight line speed, it's probably going to be this place with, like I said, the 17-mile straight.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the aforementioned 17-mile Mistral straight. I quite like the naming convention of it, to be completely honest. Ooh, Vladimir Popov, we're seeing from the rear wing of his number 49 Audi R8. He's got Ostrachars for a close company, you would say. And that shows you, one of the things you've not really talked about, Chris, is the fact that on a number of these corners here at Paul Ricard, you have got the capacity to take some slightly different lines, haven't you? And that tight left-hander, I think it's Virage de Camp, is one of those where you can either just cut in early, or you can kind of take that wide line and come in and it can be one of those where miscommunications can really have an impact on these races.
You know, maybe that's the magic of Paul Ricard. I've never been a great fan of this track, but maybe that's the magic, is the fact that there are so many options for very tight racing here that the vistas and scenery don't need to be extra because the racing, right in the of the turn there. The racing can be so good just because of the variety of approaches here.
Yeah, absolutely. As we see there, John Gray getting himself past Ostrachaz through there. The car who lost that now, I'm just because a lot of people have just gained a handful of positions. I'm not really sure where that's come from because no one appears to have actually disappeared anywhere. Now, one thing I am going to mention, I'm going to bring out some pit stop times for you with some lovely intel from my end in the broadcast studio here. But Mark Roddenberry, first of the running cars who has pitted by quite some way. He has got about 15 seconds back to Russell Matthieson in P21 at the moment. The reason why that's the case, for those of you who aren't aware, is because he seems to be the only person so far who has properly read the rule set, I would argue. And he was only in the pit. He was only stationary in the pit box for 6 seconds. The nearest to that was Carlo Durazio, who was stationary for 24.
26 versus 24. Wow.
Matthieson was in there for 34 seconds. That's what, and Jackson was 28. So he's gained 6 seconds, which explains why because they were quite close. I mentioned at the time, but they were quite close coming out of the pit lane anyway. I think there was about a second or two between them, which is now expanded by quite a bit. But Roddenberry, if he's the only one who's really picked up on this, could be in for a decent haul of points if he keeps doing this, if he doesn't lose it like he nearly did going through the S's there.
Although now all the guys who have the broadcast in the background go, wait, what?
That's a bit too late, isn't it? They've probably filled too much, or filled not enough. So you see James Jackson.
That's an insane difference.
It is. On the start finish rate is James Jackson to get the inside into the S's on James Buchanan. This is a battle in the silver class, so Buchanan's going to want to hold on to it side by side going for the S's, but no. James gets the move up the inside and then manages to hang it round the outside of the second apex, that one. So good racing from those two. Sadly, Chris, there's actually quite a lot of gaps forming on this track. The ones who are very close are the likes of these guys, Vianovic and Neutelings. Ostrachaz and Gray still close together, Jackson and Buchanan, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, it's really starting to spread out here. Not totally sure why, but I guess when it comes to tracks where gaps could be created, you make a unfortunate decision coming into that long straight and you're just losing time consistently that entire length of the straight, and it's just frustrating. So maybe there's a little bit of mistakes happening into that final corner, and it's just, or not final corner, but right before the straight, and it's just really making those gaps approach. I don't know.
Yeah,
because there
remains
is
to
a
be
lot.
seen. Maybe we'll see it close up in the second half of this race. But at the nearly halfway point, it's Andrew Priadko who leads the way by 16 seconds.
Oh, he's got that
Ash
Verstappen
Coupland.
set up, huh? Nice.
He is very, very quick indeed. It's the GT2 versus all the GT3s behind him as he stands at the moment. As I said before, I don't think it will be very long before he gets up into the pro class. I think he probably already is, given the pace he's showing. Fastest lap of the race by at least half a second to anyone else. But yeah, Ash Coupland sitting there in second position. Carola Gullis now sits in P3, and that is because Miles Dixon... that's what's happened. Miles Dixon has disappeared from the server. That is why there was that change. I mentioned on my broadcast app that loads of people went up positions and I couldn't figure out why. That is why. Dixon has disappeared, so he's retired from this one, unfortunately. Maybe some hardware issues for him. Colin Dunn in a lofty fourth position. As you see, Vojinovic is going to look up the inside at Scene. Oh, we've seen that go wrong once before. Luckily, these two live to fight another day. Popov in P5, Ostrachaz in P6 with John Gray very close behind him at the moment. In fact, there might have been a little bit of an incident there between them because they were very close a second ago. Yeah, you can see Ostrachaz goes a little bit wide through Debose. And then, is there any contact here? There's not, no. Unfortunately, Gray breaks quite early, you'd argue, to be fair.
Looks like it was just I'm going to end up messing up both of our races. Let's live and fight another day.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
that
Colin
was
Dunn,
smart.
Colin Dunn, P4. got Popov right on the back of him at the moment. I would imagine Colin's not going to do too much in terms of defending this.
No, especially with, so as we mentioned before, he was hoping for a top 20. Being in P4 right now, he's probably like, I don't care what I have to do to just have the rest of the race be safe. I'm gonna do it.
I'm loving the logo on the rear spoiler inlet, by the way. You shouldn't notice that.
I have not
Little
noticed
plug,
that.
little plug for something that might be relatively close to your heart, I would like to think. Keep an eye on it.
I think I already know what it would be. It'd be a nice little chevron with a G and an F inside of it, right?
You would be absolutely right, sir. Lovely to see it. Yeah, I can't imagine. I know Colin very well. He's a very sensible driver as well. Our head steward, for no less a positive perception, he is not going to be making anything more difficult than he has to be. And here comes Vladimir Popov in the Audi R8 GT3, and there you go. Yeah,
nice and easy one.
Yeah, not surprising, and I totally understand.
Oh, yeah.
There is no point in him getting involved in that, because all it's going to do is ultimately hamper his race. And at the moment, he is running the lead car. If he pits, presuming he's going to do the same kind of stock plan that Raddenbury does, is going to be coming out in a very decent position, assuming he keeps everything clean and tidy, which does remain the case as to whether any of these cars don't end up going up the rear of him, because this is very busy on track.
That was very tight. Those kind of turns make me so nervous, because I'm like, it might not even be the driver behind me's fault. It could be a netcode issue when you're that close together, where you're just like, are we gonna come in? This is terrible.
And then you've got a driver like Hagel, who's on your screen now, trying to work his way through these guys. He's a couple of laps down, or he's a lap down, sorry, on these guys. Not anymore, of course, because he's just gotten past them. So he's technically not yet a lap down on the likes of, that is Ostrachaz and the Lamborghini behind him. He's obviously super quick, as we know. He's going to want to try and get through these as quickly as possible, because he's miles off. In the nicest way possible, he is miles off.
Yeah.
That top spot.
I mean, obviously, props to him for not giving up after the bad incident and just kind of like giving up and staying in the pits, or not even participating anymore. Like you said last time, he went up to 4th place, I think is what you mentioned, that he ended up finishing in after having an incident before. So it's definitely possible for him, but like you say, he's pretty far out right now with 30 minutes remaining. Not saying it's impossible, just saying it'll be difficult.
Yeah. He's got a lot of work to do. I think that's the simplest way to put it. You're absolutely right. And when he's caught up with these guys as well, it just makes it a little bit more difficult. Oh my goodness me. That was Colin Dunn kind of, I wouldn't say cut across John Gray. It was more of like he's going for the apex, and as a result, they nearly caught each other. But that was so close between them. These guys are super quick. There you can see Colin Dunn losing the position to John Gray. Unsurprisingly, Hagel around the back end of this as well. Again, excuse me. Colin will know who Marcus Hagel is. He will know how quick this guy is. He's a very household name in this series. He's a very quick household name as well. As our leader, Andrew Pradko, pits from first position, that promotes at least a couple of the guys behind up a couple of positions. And yeah, Colin, I'm sure, will be looking at that thinking, right, there's no need for me to hold him up here. I'm just going to wait for a good spot to let him through and just get on with my race.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely.
Let's see. So this Pradko, is he coming into the pit lane? In fact, I think he's leaving pit lane. He was stopped for 15 seconds.
Okay, so it's coming down, but it's not quite Mark Raddenbury's 6 quite yet. But
no, it's not. So he has come out. He's what, P9 at the moment. Comiskey in the pit lane as well. Has he served his pit stop? No, so he's not stopped yet. So he's still got a bit of time as he jumps down that huge hill kind of midway through the pit lane, which I always think is really strange. So Pradko is, how far ahead of Mark Raddenbury? He's what, 5? He's about 25 seconds ahead, from what I can tell of my very quick and probably not very good maths. So that means, I can do a little bit of reverse engineering, Mark is circa P4.
What, really? Well,
I think. No, my luck. He's going to come out of this in a little while, and it'll end up being like 7th, because I've managed to get it completely wrong. knowing me. But
Yeah, well,
we'll soon find
we'll
out.
see. We'll find out, right? But a 6-second pit stop, closest now being 15, still is over double. The closest before that was what, 20 something? You said, or 20? There's definitely room for paying a little bit more attention to those pit stop requirements, huh?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm looking back. So where's Matt Comiskey? Because he pitted as well. He was in the pit. He was stationed for 32 seconds as well.
Okay.
I feel like there's been a big loophole that these guys have missed, because I can see it on the calendar clear as day, and I believe it was called out earlier in the server as well. Minimum of 1 litre. That was it.
Yeah, there's no tires. Minimum of 1 liter.
No tires.
Super
Exactly.
quick.
Yeah.
Maybe the strategy that we were talking about in the beginning, where fill it up and then just take the absolute minimum. Maybe that is Mark's strategy. He's sitting back there going, guys, don't give away what I'm doing. And maybe some of the other drivers did do the method that we weren't exactly sold on, where they do like a half and half, or a different amount of fuel to have a lighter car. Maybe
we shall see. Still got about a dozen people left to pit, including Colin Dunn, who's now in the pit lane, along with Dusan Vojinovic as well. Yeah, Colin still stationary, 7, 8, that's his 10 seconds. He's a little bit longer. He's now stopped. He's going again. So that's a 10-second stationary stop for him. Vojinovic, I mean, he's still going. He's still sat stationary at 12, 13, 14, 15 seconds. So
yeah, so
I expect that we're probably going to get a lot of the same people who will know this and will be part of the admin team, which has no impact on this. May I just stress that point? It will be those in the admin team who will get this right, because they will have read the rules properly.
Hey, sometimes I wouldn't put it past any sim racer to hear the rules of the pit stop for the upcoming race for the first time in the driver briefing.
Oh, 100%. Absolutely.
I bet there's a lot.
Oh, this is very, very much true. So Rich Knight there in the number 100 car in the front. He got absolutely done by Russell Matthieson, but again, it's these people on different strategies, isn't it, where there is no real benefit to them fighting. He's given up the positions to Matthieson and Dunn very quickly indeed, and that is Colin Dunn, who's come out of his pit stop a second behind Matthieson, who was P5 at the start of this one. So as it stands, from a pit stop perspective, Priadko is leading this race because he's pitted. Let's assume that there's obviously everyone else kind of filtering in this gap. Then you're looking at Raddenbury, Matthieson, and Colin Dunn as it stands, who would be your top 4. Obviously, that's not going to be the case. You'd expect some people will pit and spend less time stationary than others, but it's enough to take into account. It's an interesting one. There might not be a huge amount of action on track, but I'm finding this amount of time spent in the pit lane, Chris, rather fascinating.
Yeah, right? Not a lot going on the track, so we just focus on pit times, right? I'm very curious if anyone is going to equalize that 6 seconds that Mark Raddenbury put in, which is about the absolute minimum, right? I don't think there's a little bit of side swiping action, but the runoff area makes it relatively safe there. Just join right back in and make sure your steering's okay. And he even gives up the position because of the little hip check. Very good racing there. That's how it's done. Very good.
Yeah, good to see. I have actually managed to see, Chris, that one person has managed to supersede that pit stop stationary time by somehow 6 seconds. On the aforementioned 6 seconds that Mark Raddenbury was stationary for. Michael de Groot is on your screen now. Apparently, his time stop was 0 seconds.
Well, that's no. Obviously, that's a problem with ACC, right?
I was going to say, unless he has had a drive-through, for example, and has just literally just done like a straight lap through the pit lane, potentially.
Hold on. Is that a penguin on the side of his livery there?
Yes.
Okay.
There is, I think, if I go to this, yeah, there it goes. I don't know what it is. I don't know if, the only thing I know is they're all from the Orca, and it's a cat. I think it's a cat. Hold on a second.
Is that the new version of the AI generated? Because we did have the cosmic cat at one point. What do we have here? No, that is a cat. Wait, what the heck is? That's a cat orca thing. I
don't know what it is. I'm trying to get it from different angles to figure out what on earth it might be.
What is going on here?
I am absolutely baffled as to what that car is. That is. There's another one on the other side as well.
Yeah,
The
that's
only thing it looks like, and this is showing my my
a cat whale. Or what do you call that?
I don't know. There's a meme, or I say it's not really a meme. It's like it's just a picture, which so happens to probably be referred to as a meme nowadays by every child that is alive. But there's a picture of a cat in the snow, and I don't know what it's doing, but it's like it's in that kind of position, and it looks like the way that I think the caption on it is like, this cat has just struck the sweetest free kick in a game of football you've ever seen. And that's all I can think of when I see it. Again, Google it after the broadcast and have a look and just say cat playing football in the snow, anything like that.
Okay.
And you'll see what I mean. It's very, very strange indeed. First drive through of the evening. Oh, interesting development here is Russell Mathieson hits a drive-through penalty. So he's running up in, you'd think maybe the top 5, Chris, do you reckon? Just based on what we're talking about up at the moment. That's going to shift him right the way back down.
Yeah, it is. What did he get it for? Do we have information on that?
We don't, but you can only assume, given the track that we're at, it's going to be for track limits.
Yeah, it's almost guaranteed that it's track limits of some sort because, you follow the wrong line and you never know. It's
Andreas Pettersson is, sorry, he's saying in the chat, it's an orcat.
An orcat, okay. So an orca and a cat. I was leaning on Corca, maybe, like with cat, orca, corca, I don't know. But an orcat, okay.
Oh, it is. It's a thing.
Like a meme thing, not like a real thing. I'm like, no, there's not such a thing.
I have found the exact picture that it's been modeled off, and it's from a Reddit channel called Hybrid Animals.
Okay, well, that's no surprise that originates from Reddit.
Yeah, it says
I love
cat.
That place.
Oh, goodness me! Is Vujanovic and Gray getting very, very close? Let's focus on some action for a second rather than talking about cat orca hybrids. As Vujanovic loses P14 or P15, sorry, no P14. Time and Tower get itself right in a minute. From John Gray, that's Matt Comiskey, very much in the background of this, as well as Mark Cooper pits from 9th position.
We've got a BMW sandwich between those Mercs right now. That is unsettling.
It's a little bit top heavy on the bread, on the BMW bread as well, I would argue. That Mercedes bringing up the rear at the moment. Rich Knight also into the pits as well. So we're starting to see some more people. As ridiculously, Chris, we've got less than 20 minutes left of this race. I feel like we were watching the start about 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, this even though, like we were saying, there was some decent spreads happening, some gaps are forming. It does seem like the action randomly, just by maybe a couple random side swipes and stuff, is keeping us entertained. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, absolutely. Failing that, we'll just go back and start looking at we'll look at animal hybrids on Reddit.
The orcats again, right?
Yeah.
Maybe that's the problem. We're paying attention to orcats instead of.
Maybe what the chat isn't telling us is we're actually missing out on the best race that's ever been hosted by Positive Perception, and we're just not paying attention to it. I'd like to think that's not the case. Well, actually, no, I'd like to think it was. Sorry, because then it means we're not missing out anything. Yeah, half cat, half orca. Gazulina says in the chat as well. Yeah, so we found it now. So I've found the Reddit channel. I might go and have a look at that Reddit channel after the stream. This Hybrid Animals sounds quite fun.
I will do everything in my power to avoid going to that Reddit because I lose too many hours to the wormhole that is and just browsing around subreddits all the time.
Oh god, yeah, I'm a big fan of the Sim Racing Stewards subreddit that Jimmy Broadbent does his videos off of when he does them every now and again. I do very much enjoy watching those.
See, that's at least something that's a little bit productive for you as a steward / sim racer. Me, I'm like in Florida, man, just looking at the ridiculousness in that subreddit. Just pure mindless entertainment for me.
Sometimes it's what you need, though. Just take that edge off, you know?
Yeah. This BMW is just the gap is forming in front and behind, so well, look at that. Okay, right as I say that, here we go with a little bit of a different braking.
Yeah,
I want to see
he's going to try to cut back
the straight speed. So I want to see them be this close when they get to the long straight and be able to see the BMW just raw engine power pushing through. But even right here, you can kind of see it's not remarkably different, but you can tell that the BMW does have a little bit more pace in there. It just
so let's have a look.
pulls out a little bit each time. Now
Yeah.
we get a nice approach here by the Merc, but once they get side by side again, it's going to be a little bit of a battle.
Yeah, so I'm looking at the speed trap at the moment. So it's 287 Ks for the BM, who's now been overtaken. So Vujinovic does lose the position to Kwiatkowski. Now this will be an interesting one because, like you say, how quickly is he going to get up onto the back of this Merc?
Looking like he might be out of range now, though. He's pretty far back to get that slipstream pull.
That's very true. Yeah, 287 in the speed trap for Vujinovic in the BMW plays, 281 in the speed trap for Kwiatkowski in the Merc. So a big difference.
Yeah, that's
the slowest in the speed trap. I'm looking at the moment is actually James Jackson, I think, in the McLaren, who's only coming in at 276. Which is a bit strange.
Massive difference.
That feels kind of almost uncharacteristically slow. I wonder if he's gone for a high downforce setup to kind of make the most of the mid part of the track, and then he's kind of catering or almost like kind of relying on the fact that there might be some flow action and some slipstream down the back straight perhaps in the race.
Right. Yeah. I would probably go with a very downforce heavy car and sacrifice some straight line. Personally, I'd agree with that strategy.
I think I probably would as well, because the split times on this track in ACC are basically thirds. They're almost exactly the same. It's almost 31 seconds, pretty much every sector. So that's 100% what I'd be looking at doing. So your drive through cleared for, I think that's Jamie Buchanan's. Mike Richards gets a stop go 30, so speeding in the pit lane for him.
Ooh,
as that is him and Buchanan very much next to each other. John Gray at the inside. Matt Kwiatkowski at the inside. Sorry.
That's a dangerous spot.
I'm thinking, I'm banking on 2/3 of the lap, me being quicker than the 1/3, which is the straight.
Yeah.
If I'm honest.
Yeah, especially considering the start finish is not on the main straight back there, so you definitely want that extra.
If that was the case, I might potentially consider banking a little bit more on the downforce and using that. But yeah, as you say, the fact that it's a short straight, you can get out of the final corner quickly enough. It's very rare, unless you get a really poor exit, you're going to lose a position before the start finish line.
Right.
Let's look a bit further back down the grid. Rich Knight up against Daniel Crinson. And we've lost a few more drivers throughout this session by the looks of it. We've dropped down to 32 now. Again, can't quite tell from the names who we've lost. Just having a look around. Just spot some names I recognise. Nothing significant at the moment, but I'll keep an eye on it to see what I can spot. But yeah, Rich Knight under a bit of pressure from Dan Crinson, who is definitely, Chris, you'd argue, looking for a better display in the second half of the race, because he started, I think he started 7th, I believe. Yeah, he started 7th, lost 15 positions. So he's going to want to try and make a little bit more of the last 15 minutes or so, you'd think.
You know, I wonder if he got caught up in a couple of those smaller incidents where there was just a bunch of contact, just slowed everyone down a little bit, or even not necessarily being involved, just behind the action that made him slow down so much, because that is a lot of positions to just naturally lose. And now in my races, that seems pretty normal, and I'm like, oh, I'm doing pretty good. But yeah, in these guys, they're all pretty quick, pretty consistent. So that seems like there was something that impeded his progress at some point, or maybe multiple points during this race.
I think we need to let you out of the commentary box, Chris, and give you a chance next season on the track. I want to see how you get on.
I don't know if you want to see that. I'd be getting the virtual hand slap by Mark for sure.
I don't think you'd get even though I don't think you would be anyway, but I don't think you'd get the virtual hand slap for being too slow.
That's true. Yeah.
And plus, I don't think you would be anyway. We've got to, as you know, look, we're inclusive here at Positive Perception. We want to make sure that everybody gets a chance. We've got some people here who are super quick. We've got some people here who will not mind me saying they are not the fastest by a long stretch. But
hey, it's sim racing. We're sim racers. We're not Grand Prix or actual. Some of us need in the sim to do that. Generally, we all have to remember sometimes. Sim racing in the end is a video game, and we do it for fun. So Hosper is. I was going to participate in the GT4 race, but it ended up being, at least the last season, it ended up being too contradictory. I wasn't able to do the commitment that I thought I was going to be able to, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But I do want to race at some point in time with you guys. And, if there's anyone out there that does want to race in a very, very fun and inclusionary, I'll use your term, community, I think Posper is one of the ones that I personally recommend 9 times out of 10.
You heard it here first, kids. You heard it here first. Hot off the press, Chris, in other news, Vladimir Popov has officially now got the fastest stopped time in the pit lane. Going back to pit stop gate. He's 5 seconds stationary in the box.
That's reasonable. 0 seconds from that last one that you said someone had. That doesn't make sense. But 5 seconds, okay. So I think we're approaching now the absolute minimum. I don't think you're going to get out of there in much less 5 seconder. Let's be honest. Even if you somehow get the fuel nozzle to go a little faster, I think you're pretty much at the limit.
Improves that fuel flow rate. Now here we go. So this is Vladimir Popov, the aforementioned. That is Mark Roddenberry in his rear view mirror, or in the front of our camera screen at the moment. He's not gaining a huge amount, because although he's actually gaining more the faster they go by the looks of it. But as they come up to the braking zone, nothing going to be doing. Is Mark going to look up the inside? No, he's not. Sensible, you'd think.
So I've noticed this a couple times when we've been watching the BMW behind on that straight. Their low-end power seems to be about equal with everyone else, but once they start to get up into the 170 per hour, and that's when they continue to accelerate, whereas the other cars really do start to top end of their ability to keep accelerating quickly.
Yeah, I think that was very, very evident there, wasn't it? Like you say, because there wasn't. Yeah, you're right. There wasn't a massive amount of gain really until you kind of got to almost past where the F1 chicane bit is, and then you started seeing him kind of clawing that time back. So Ostrash's in the pit lane now as well. He has been stationary for 9 seconds.
Okay,
he's moving again. So we're starting to see people drop it down. I think this is understandable, isn't it? Because we're back at the end of the lap. The end of the going towards the end of the race. Sorry, this is the point where you are going to see those kind of splash and dash strategies coming in.
Yeah, without a doubt. And you got to wonder if I can go that quickly. And later on, when some of the 20 seconders or 30 seconders come and maybe watch back the broadcast, they'll be like, "Wait a minute, I could have gone how quick through that pit stop? What's going on here?
How much time?"
Right.
Yeah, it's one of those, they'll be kicking themselves, I'm sure, afterwards. But it has made it. The one thing it has meant is that, and this is the beauty of these kind of sessions, is if you do a tyre mandatory stop race, chances are 99% of people are going to pit bang on halfway and change tyres then. It makes sense. There's no point doing it any other way. However, when you do it this way and you've got that fuel, there is that element of how do you read into it? How much are you going to pit in as we go? Green wide into the final corner.
A little bit of straightening out. There you go.
That is Messrs. I mean, let's look at that from the helicams. This is Messrs. Knight, Van der Stroys and Tuominen, I believe. This is just a little bit too...
it's just too tight in there. There's not much...
Everyone trying to go into the apex at the same time at the same point.
I think there were a couple of bad decisions in that instance there, but it was just tight racing. I don't think there's anything to be as we've been saying, slapping wrists of what the...
That, to me, that looked like... I don't know if we can see. I want to try and get it from this angle, because that looked like it might not have been contact. That looked like a bit of an overcorrection from Crinson, potentially. We'll see it from the interior.
Here? No, that looked like contact inside here because of the way the...
Oh, my word, what's happened here? There we go, let's get back onto that. That was odd.
That was
I'm
very
really not
odd.
sure what happened there.
I wonder if maybe there was a wheel malfunction. The only way... It could have been contact based on the way that the virtual driver's hands just careened to the left like that. But it also could have been like a drop in force feedback or something like that, where he was turning and then all of a sudden no force feedback and out you go.
There's definitely no contact. We'll watch that back again from the Helicam. You can see there's a little bit of contact before the incident. See a little touch there. Another tiny touch there, but I don't think that's enough to set him off.
So if it wasn't a hardware malfunction of some sort, that code, and that's all we can say about that, because there was not contact at the point where he careened off the track like that. There was just they were close, very, very close, and that's why I kind of can lean on maybe the game thought they were even closer, but even at that distance, if there was contact, it doesn't feel like he would shoot off the track like that. So that did feel like a hardware function.
Yeah, 100%. Bit of snap oversteer maybe is as been suggested by Alex in the chat. Oh no, Chris, drive through Mark Roddenberry.
Oh no!
Heartbreak for Pos per Bossman. So that's going to shift him. It's going to shift him out of the top 10, I think.
Yeah, that's going to.
Because I'm looking at it, you've got a straight run through the pit lanes about 30 seconds. In fact, it is 30 seconds. Yeah, they go. So come back to what we said earlier about those 0-second stop times. That is people serving drive-throughs.
Okay, yeah.
Because I can see a few people on my end as well. The other thing to keep an eye out for, so the gap to the leader for Priadko, who's of course our kind of net race leader at the moment, is 36.2 seconds from Ash Coupland back to Priadko in third. The shortest amount of time you can be really stationary for is Popov. We've talked about him. He was stationary for 5 seconds, the man who we're on board with at the moment. He was in the pit lane for 38 seconds in total. So it's going to be very close between Coupland and Priadko when they come out of this. And that gap's increasing, Chris, as well. It's worth mentioning.
Poor Mark. I'm just, in
heartbreak.
my mind, I'm envisioning just the deflated shoulders of... Because he was having a fabulous race there.
Don't get me wrong, he's still having it. It's still
he's still
display.
He's still having a fabulous race, which I don't want to discount the fact that he's in right now
12th place, yeah.
But 5:35 left. You're not getting that stuff back, unfortunately.
No, unfortunate to see. Very, very disappointing from his angle. This is your race leader, Ash Coupland, who sits P1 at the moment. So like I say, he's got a 37-second gap. He's running some quick lap times. He's a second quicker almost than Priadko on that last lap. This is really where that battle for the lead comes in. Jurgulis, as much as I hate to say it, too far back to make any real difference in terms of battling for the lead. At the moment, though, if Ash is doing what we'd assume he will, Chris, and you have to think he's going to pit for the littlest amount of fuel possible.
Oh, yeah.
I think the smallest amount of time you can be stationary is 3 seconds.
3? Okay, so we had 5, and I thought that was...
if Ash can if he can genuinely do it in 3 seconds, he will come out in the lead.
Okay.
As long as he's on the money in terms of his pit stop, of course.
Let's see what the real race report and to see the pit stop times. Here's what we're excited about. But when you switch to his car, for some reason, we'd been watching him a couple times in the past, and we've seen his livery, obviously. But for some reason, this time when you went back to it, I was like, wait, are you on the wrong car? I'm expecting to see a Posper car. What's going on?
Sadly, he is no more. We've lost him to the Pulse system. Don't get me wrong, we are obviously super pleased for him, I think.
Yeah, that's awesome for him.
But look, you see Pulse everywhere, don't you, at the end of the day? They've got an incredibly professional and fast outfit, and I think the fact, I said this to him as well, he won't mind me saying it, but the fact that he's been pulled into that tells you how much he has improved over the last year or so.
Sure.
Me and him, back end of last year, were relatively similarly paced, as he does now come into the pit lane with 3.5 minutes pretty much left to go.
Let's see how quick.
He was the one who we were very similarly paced, and he's just continued.
That's what so that's what I like about sim racing, is if you put in the work, you will get better. And there's something to be said about sim racing versus something like, let's say, CSGO or Rocket League or some of these more style reactionary things. If you look at the fields of these games, when you look at sim race, ESL, R1, if you look at the age range of people, it's a much more diverse collection of people in the world of sim racing than it is in, which I like about that. It's almost I guess, doing air quotes, your career in sim racing can be a lot longer than it can in other video game esports style stuff.
Absolutely. So there we go. That is Coupland out the pits stationary for 8 seconds, Chris. And as a result, 5.6 seconds behind Priadko. So Priadko re-inherits the lead of 2.5 minutes left. That's a shame, because it looked to me like if he'd have kept on doing what he was doing, Cooper had a good shot at the win, but failing any incidents from Priadko on this one, it does look like the number 1 car in that silver class is going to be taking the victory this evening.
The one thing that I would be very curious to know is what is being done differently in these. Not really so concerned about like the 30 seconds or the 20-second ones, but it's the ones that are the difference 8 seconds and 5 seconds. Like, what is the big difference there? What was done differently in that pit strategy, or the pit settings, I guess you would say, in the sim world?
No, absolutely. I mean, I'm looking at them at the moment. You can see it. You can sense a trend. So Priadko, stationary stop time 15 seconds. Coupland, the man in your picture at the moment, in second, 8 seconds. Jurgulis and Popov, both 5 seconds. Colin Dunn, 10 seconds. John Gray, Matt Comiskey, Oscar Motan, James Jackson, won't count Mark, because he was kind of up in that top 5 anyway, all 20 seconds plus. And that's your difference, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
That is the difference between where they've ended up in the race as a result. As we've got, a minute and a half left. So where are we on track? This is going to be the penultimate lap going on to this will be the second to last time Priadko is going to come through this final corner. Interestingly, Chris, I'm going to say it's not going to be close enough, I don't think. But there is some improvement from Ash. He has gained a second on this lap. Interestingly.
Yeah, there's still a pretty massive lead there. That's going to be a very difficult gap to close, especially with cars in between you. But I think this is kind of locked in at the time. And let's be honest, Andrew, he just kind of, after that first little hip check in the very beginning of the race, he just kept going and going. Like I was jokingly saying, he's the Verstappen setup on that Merc right now. So he had a pretty leisurely driven. It seems like it would be very comfy.
He's been pretty much flawless, you would argue. It's been a fantastic display for him. Of course, still got the best part of a lap to go. He's on the Mistral Straight at the moment, just coming onto there. So he's still got to keep it clean and tidy. He's got a few back markers you would think to navigate, as that's Jamie Buchanan just getting out of the way for Messrs. Neutelings and Cooper, who are your men on screen at the moment. Two of the closer running cars as it stands. The other two within a second are James Jackson and Ollie Gill, you can see on screen. Mark Roddenberry has gotten past James Jackson and is in P9 courtesy of some of the pit stops. So still a good result, again assuming that's kept clean for the final lap. Still a good result from Posper Bossman, you'd say.
Oh yeah, still a fabulous result. He'll be dreaming about that drive-through penalty, but still.
God, yeah, he won't. We'll speak to him after this, I've no doubt, and he will be fuming at himself. And I understand it; it's very frustrating. To answer Alex's question in the chat, 5 drivers sadly have retired from this one through many different reasons, I'm sure. As we see, then one man who hasn't retired and one man who has been a cut above the rest, you would argue, throughout this evening. Once he got past Hagel on the first lap going through Debose, he has never looked back. Your winner here in round 3 of the Positive Perception GT Championship is Andrew Priadko. God, get the name right if you're going to do such an important call at the end of it. Second place is going to be Ash Coupland of Pole Sim Sport. Fantastic drive from him again, especially considering the incidents he was caught up in the first couple of corners. Karolis Jurgulis makes it a Pole Sim Sport 2-3, and then it's a massive gap of around about 22.5 seconds back to this man, Vladimir Popov, who will come through for P4 in the end. I think it's arguably going to be P4 in the Pro class as well, because there is absolutely no chance that Andrew Priadko is going to be a Silver class driver come Silverstone in a couple of weeks' time. And a massive shout out to this man who will be taking the AM class victory. Colin Dunn, ladies and gentlemen, the number 19 in Positive Perception Racing, takes 5th place in the end of this one. Chris, that is incredible.
He will be unbelievably happy with that performance. He wanted in the top 20. Well, you did significantly better than that, sir. Well driven.
Yeah, absolutely. Well John Gray coming through in 6th place. Matt Comiskey in P7, Oscar Motan in P8. Mark Roddenberry will come through in P9 in the end following that unfortunate drive through. Ollie Gill does get past James Jackson on the final lap to make it P10 for him. Jackson 11th. Vojinovic comes through in P12. Jenkins P13. Neutelings 14th. Cooper 15th. Ostrachaz comes through in P16, I believe. I've got people leaving the server, so I'm having to try and do this off the top of my head. Terry Driscoll will come through in P17. Marcus Hagel will round out in P18 in the end. Karayanis will come through in P19. And then Ivo van Kollenberg will round out the top 20. Twyman and Richards, Van der Stroys, Hackanson, Buchanan, Derek De Groot, San Severino, Crinson and Louise, the last of the running cars still in the server. I did see Carlo Durazio in there somewhere as well, but didn't quite catch where he finished. Chris, I think we kind of hit the nail on the head a little bit, haven't we? It wasn't the most action-packed of races, I think it's fair to say. However, there was still a lot to unpack from it because it was a very strategic style race, wasn't it, in the end?
It was. And, you know, coming off of the tail end of a race that had 22 steward notices in it, it's probably a good thing. And Mr. Mark Posper Bossman will be very satisfied with the we don't know how many reports or challenges, or why is my brain not working, but we don't know how many people are going to reporting things at this point in time. But generally speaking, a couple door rubs, couple of mistaken turn-ins and things like that, all in normal racing. I think this was a fabulous race.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I say, very different to what you'd normally expect, but still a brilliant race nonetheless. So your winners, as I've just seen the server tick over, and it is absolutely tipping it down with rain. We need to stop this happening, Chris. We really do. Now I can see in the interview room, primarily because I've told him to come in. I'm going to bring him in now. Is Colin Dunn? Colin, you're on the stream, so please do not swear. But oh my word, did you know? I don't think anyone expected that, including you. You one of the top 20. You came through in 5th. How does it feel?
That's incredible. Best finish I've had in Posper for ever, I think. Incredible result.
You did everything you needed to do, didn't you? Because you kept it clean. You didn't get involved in any incidents. And we were talking about it because I think there was a point where I think you had a couple of the guys coming up who were arguably in the nicest way possible, probably a little bit quicker than you, but you were sensible, weren't you? Because you didn't kind of get into battles with them. You just kind of played it cool, played the long game, and it's paid off.
Yeah, there were a few bits at the start. I mean, that long slowing right-hander, there was a car stationary at one point sideways, but you know, I had to run wide around it and someone went up my inside, but you know, let them go. Like I say, just avoid all the little bits of incidents and some of those fast people coming through, like Marcus, who looked like he had a nightmare today, and just let them go and pick my battles.
Yeah, and pick your battles you did, and it worked absolutely brilliantly. I mean, yeah, like when you were kind of, let's put it half of your so I think by lap 1, I think you were around between sort of 7th or 8th, I think, and I think Mark Raddenbury had followed you through to a certain extent as well. What was the chatter like? Because obviously I know you guys always sit in the voice chat and Discord as well. Was anything, were you talking about it at all, or were you just kind of keeping your head in the game, focused, kind of staying quiet at that point, just kind of getting on with what you need to be doing?
Oh, Mark, as usual, was taking the mick. It was all right. I mean, there was a bit of a surprise when I came out of the pits and Mark had 10 seconds on me. But unfortunately for him, he then got the drive-through for track limits.
Yeah, very, very unfortunate. How was it looking on your perspective from track limits? Because obviously we know, Paul Ricard, it's not exactly difficult to get any track limit warnings, is it?
Just the one cut for me.
Fair enough. God, wow. I mean, yeah, look, what a result. Like I say, I think everyone, even in the chat, there's people throwing it out there and saying how pleased they are. And it's great to see that when you put it in, put the effort in, it's definitely paid off for you. I mean, I suppose the question I always kind of wrap up these kind of conversations with, and it's going to be a difficult one, but Silverstone in a couple of weeks' time, where'd you go from here?
I guess I've got to be looking at top 10s again.
Yeah, got to keep it going. Wow, Colin, look, congratulations, mate. That is a fantastic result. Great session in qualifying. You've managed to outdo it in the race as well. P5, congratulations, and go and enjoy it.
Thank you very much.
There you go, guys. Colin Dunn there. Fantastic to see a brilliant result from him in the end. Yeah, coming through in P5 at the end, Chris. That is, I know we've focused on it a lot, and I know that it probably shows a little bit of bias towards the POSPER team as a whole, but it's not even that. I think it's just the fact that someone who, again, Colin won't mind me saying, like, we don't necessarily see him at the sharper end of the grid, do we? To see that come through, it kind of shows you how quick you can be without necessarily being, like, having to make moves. Do you know what I mean? You can kind of just carve your way through just by getting out of trouble almost.
Yeah, it's one of those cases where consistency and just pure composure got him through the race, and just he did a great job of keeping control of his car, keeping his wits about him, letting people through that he knew for a fact he didn't need to battle. I think the smarts really are what created that position for him, and it's a very, very brilliant drive in there. And it just goes to show that, you know, even though he was like, oh, top 20 is kind of where I want to finish, as long as you keep your wits about you, you can get to the top of the grid. You can be in the top of all the finishers, even when it's a multi-class race. So it's just, you know, it's inspiring. We don't like those people that are like, oh, I'm going to win every race. We like the people that are like, oh, I want a P20, and then they end up in the top 10. So it's a happy moment for everyone involved, and especially Mr. Colin himself.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic display from him, and a fantastic display from everyone. Like we said, we've seen a few incidents here and there tonight, but generally a lot cleaner than what we've had in the past, which is what we want to see. We want to see fair, clean, and good quality racing, which we've definitely seen this evening. Chris, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you back in the commentary box with me as usual. I've missed you in the last few rounds.
Well, I will be here for the rest of them, so we're ready to roll.
Your dulcet West Coast tones?
Well, East Coast of the United States, technically, but they call it the Midwest. But let's not get into all that crazy stuff.
Let's not. No, let's finish off everything there. Let's wrap things up. At this moment in time, the next stream you will see will be the GT4s next week. They will be at they will be at COTA next week for the GT4s, round 3 of that one on the 10th of August. When the GT3s come back into town, it'll be on the 17th of August, and we will be at Silverstone to kick off the second half of the season. Whether we see a stream or not is still a question that is to be answered. You know, I could talk about this because I will not be here. I am going off on my jollies as of the back end of next week, so I won't be handling the broadcast. We will hopefully put some contingency plans in place to get you a stream for that one. Failing that, we'll be back for the 5th round on the 31st of August, which is at the Circuit de Catalunya in Barcelona. So if we don't see you in a couple of weeks, we'll see you in a month or so. Chris, thank you so much for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure. On behalf of myself and Chris Honourable in the chat this evening, thank you for everyone who's tuned in. Have a wonderful rest of your evening or afternoon in Chris's case, and we'll see you again in a week's time for the GT4s at COTA. Until then, goodbye.